Hello, everyone, and welcome to Improve Your Resume with Practical Strategies. Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills training and tools. I'll begin today by introducing myself. I'm Marquita, and I am the Assistant Director for Technology and Training and the Marketing Coordinator for the Clayton County Library System, and I'm so excited that you are joining us today. In this workshop, we're going to review some strategies for making your resume more effective and to avoid major pitfalls that can be easy to fall into. Together, we will review lots of examples and give you some practice, and we'll also give you some tips for how digital tools can make resume writing much easier. I'll also try to monitor the chat for questions and will answer as many as I can as we go along and also at the end of this workshop. And don't forget to post and share this presentation on social media using the hashtag #CCLS Grow with Google. Okay, let's get started. So we're here today to talk about resumes. First, we will observe some resumes ourselves so that you can develop a sense of what works. Next, we will focus on 4 strategies you can use to make your resume even better. At the end of this session, you'll have a checklist of resume strategies that you can then apply to make your resume more attractive to hiring managers. So let's take some time to chat about or think about the purpose of a resume. How much time on average do you think an employer spends looking at a resume? Some people will say about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even as much as 30 minutes. We often assume that the employer will read our resume from top to bottom, but that is rarely the case. Would you be surprised to know that most recruiters and employers only spend about 6 to 10 seconds viewing a resume? So let's imagine for a moment that you are a hiring manager looking for someone to fill a position. You know what you're looking for, but you're super busy, and there are a million things on your to-do list. So you find yourself trying to get through a large stack of resumes before lunch in about 30 minutes. We will complete a sample activity to help you get a sense for how resumes make a first impression. For this activity, you'll need to have a pen and a piece of paper handy, or a digital notes document you can easily access. We'll take a look at a sample job description, and then I'm going to show you several examples of different resumes. For each resume you see, write down one word that describes the resume and then decide with a quick yes or no if you'd like to spend more time on it. We'll move on through each of the resumes, and you can write down your word and your yes or no on your paper or digital note as we go along. Here is the job description, along with some of the skills you may be looking for. We seek a high performer to join our sales team. The successful candidate will be a responsible, motivated sales associate with proven experience. This person will manage the entire sales cycle, identifying sales needs, locating and expanding new markets, designing and delivering sales presentations, and presiding over negotiations. You will build and maintain expertise about a range of company products and services. To meet or exceed personal and departmental sales goals, you'll need excellent customer service goals, an entrepreneurial worldview, business acumen, and a professional sales philosophy. Keep this description in mind as we review the 6 resumes. You don't need to remember all of the details. In fact, looking at the resumes quickly will help you to mimic what hiring managers experience as they work. The purpose of this exercise is to look at resumes through the eyes of a hiring manager so that you can better craft your own. Remember, you're writing down one adjective that describes the resume plus a yes or no on whether you would want to spend more time looking at it. You'll have 7 seconds to review each of the resumes to see if they fit the job description I just read. Ready? Here comes the first one. Clear headings make it easy for employers to identify the different sections of your resume and narrow in on the important areas for them. It also allows them to skim your resume more quickly. White space and wide margins are important to give the resume reader's eyes a break. Oftentimes, we reduce margin sizes and add more text when we are trying to fit all information on one page. This can make it more difficult for the employer to read, which could distract them from the actual content of your resume. This sample resume has a good amount of white space, which improves its readability. You probably noticed that this candidate doesn't have a lot of experience in sales. She created a skills section at the top of the resume, which can be helpful for employers to get a quick overview of her skills. But most of these skills aren't relevant to the sales representative position she's applied for. Be sure to build out an overview at the top of the resume that tailors your experience to the position you're seeking. Your experience section should include more details around how you acquired skills in your previous positions, but make sure you highlight the skills that are most relevant to the job you applied for. Here comes another example. Sometimes your work experience isn't the only area of your resume where you can showcase the value of your accomplishments. Be creative. Think about certifications, awards, volunteer work, part-time jobs, and continuing education classes that make you more qualified for the position you're seeking, and include those on the resume. You probably also noted that Adam's resume doesn't include any details about the responsibilities or accomplishments at his previous jobs. Don't assume that the employer reading your resume will know exactly what you did at each job based on the job title. You also don't want to miss an opportunity to highlight your successful projects, expanded responsibilities, and measurable accomplishments. Here comes another example. There are a few different font types featured in this resume that we will discuss in a few minutes, but the headers used for each section are in simple, readable language. Choose fonts and colors that are easy to read when you are creating your own resume. You may have also found some of the colors in this resume distracting. Depending on your industry, it may be acceptable for you to use an accent color. However, too many different colors could be distracting to an employer. Also, some of the font types in this resume are difficult to read. It's best to stick to one easily readable font type throughout the resume. Depending on your geographic location, a photo included on the resume may or may not be standard practice. Some parts of South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe require candidates to include a photo on the resume. Even if this candidate was applying to a job in one of those regions, he should include something more professional. You want to be sure your face is easily seen, the photo is in color, and you are wearing professional attire. You may also have found some typos on this resume. Make sure you take the time to review your resume for grammatical errors or typos to show an employer that you are detail-oriented. Here is another sample resume. Do you notice anything about it? Always select a font type that is simple and easy to read. While this candidate may have selected a legible font type, the lack of white space makes the resume as a whole difficult to read. There is no break for the eyes of the employer reading it, which can become overwhelming and distracting. You are likely multi-talented with different experience and interests, so it's important to only include details that are relevant to the position you are applying for. Often, it is not necessary to include additional links to social media profiles or website. The exception may be if you are applying to a position in social media management and want to showcase your expertise with your strong social media following. Some designers also may have websites showcasing their work. The most noticeable challenge with this resume is how difficult it can be to read. Too much information or crowded text can discourage an employer from reading your resume before they even review your experience. Let's take a look at this sample resume. This candidate's resume offers detailed summary at the top of her resume, which makes it easier to quickly review the most important details of her experience. When you only have 6 to 10 seconds with an employer, a detailed summary can present the best information in the quickest and easiest way possible. You may notice that the details around each of this candidate's positions follow a specific pattern. These bullet points start with a specific action verb and are followed by a measurable detail. We'll talk more about measurable details later, but this approach showcases the proof of how you executed on specific skills. You may have noticed the most distracting detail of this resume to be the font choice, as it is difficult to read and can be distracting. Sometimes you'll hold different positions during your time at one company. Instead of showing these positions as 2 separate jobs, you can combine them into one to more easily showcase your promotion or change in responsibility. Based on what you're viewing, would you hire this candidate based on his resume alone? You saw an example of a photo on a resume a few slides back, but that image lacked professionalism. In this case, this candidate has included a clear photo squared up to the camera with a smile on his face. While it may not be appropriate to include a photo on your resume, this one would be more suited for an application in a region where photos on resumes are standard practice. This candidate's resume is slightly more creative in nature, but that is true for his background as a graphic and web designer. While he may not be a good fit for a sales representative role, his resume has a clear, clean layout and plenty of white space. While his resume is easy to read, there are some obvious typos and errors that can be distracting. You may have noticed not all of the filler text was removed in the skills section. So we've talked about several pitfalls that hiring managers often see as they review resumes. Some things that detract from a good resume are the resume is too sparse or doesn't have enough information, or it is too crowded and hard to understand. It has distracting text or fonts, or has multiple errors. So we can identify an ineffective resume in other people's work pretty quickly and pick up on a few things not to do. But how do you build a good resume? How do you make it more likely that your resume gets more than the 7-second look? How do you showcase your skills and abilities to show the employer that you are a great candidate for the job? While there is no one right way to create a resume, there are many different resume styles and formats that might be appropriate for the job you're applying for. Today, we will focus on 4 key things you can do to strengthen your resume, which includes choosing a professional font, highlighting your skills and accomplishments, using specific examples and measurable details, and finally, tailoring your resume to fit the specific job description. Depending on the job you're applying for, you may want to create a more traditional resume, or for a more creative field, you could design a more creative resume. The image on the left shows a traditional format, which is mostly black and white. The image on the right shows a more creative format with more colors and images. The primary thing to remember is that your resume should be professional, organized, and easy to read. Here are some key attributes to employ when creating your resume. Be sure to include wide margins and a lot of white space. White space is the space on the page that isn't filled with text or graphics and gives the reader's eyes a rest. Be sure to use simple, readable language, clear headings, and choose an appropriate font. So you may be thinking, I don't know how to do any of that. What happens if you don't have many design skills or any at all? Maybe you don't feel comfortable formatting on a computer. You don't need to have any design skills to create a professional resume. You can just choose from a variety of pre-built Google resume templates that have already done the work for you. Templates are like a pattern you use as a guide. They provide some design elements and formatting that you can use as a starting point for your projects. They also help you keep font sizes and styles consistent throughout your document. Google Docs also offers lots of free professional resume templates to get you started. The layout, fonts, and colors are different for each template, but they all contain the same basic information that you'll need for a resume: your contact information, skills, experience, education, as well as accomplishments or projects you've completed. Once you select a template, You can customize the document from there. To access templates, you would simply sign into your Google account, click New, and then Google Docs from a template and choose the template you like. We won't talk too much about templates today, but feel free to explore them on your own as we discuss our other strategies to use. So now that we've talked about what style of resume to use, let's talk about the next strategy you can use to make your resume more professional, which is to highlight your skills and accomplishments. Notice this says highlight, not list. You do not need to include everything. Your resume is not a comprehensive list of all the jobs you ever had, or even a list of all the things you've been involved in for the last decade. Your goal is to showcase the skills and accomplishments you have and to make the employer want to call you for an interview. You want to convince them that you are a good fit for the job you're applying for, and they don't need to know everything you've ever done for you to accomplish that. But hiring managers do want to see what skills and accomplishments that are most relevant to the job, and they will likely also want to know the most recent work experience you have. Don't be afraid to eliminate jobs from your resume that are not relevant to the one you're applying for. Your work experience list does not need to be exhaustive. It simply needs to highlight the skills and accomplishments you have that are relevant to what you are applying for. On the other hand, if you've done other activities like part-time jobs or volunteer work that are closely related to the job you're applying for, include them. If you need to account for a gap in your work history, volunteer work can also be good to show that you are active and developing your skills even if you weren't employed. If you're starting a new career and haven't worked in the field before, examine all the job experience or life experience that you do have and make the connections from that experience wherever you can. Let's practice deciding which opportunities you might include on your resume and which you should eliminate. Imagine you are applying for the sales representative position you saw earlier and had worked these jobs in the past. Take a few minutes to review each of these positions and write down which jobs you would include on your resume and which you would not, and why. Also consider what specific projects or measurable details you might include to show that the past experience is relevant to the job you're applying for. What you should or shouldn't include in your resume is entirely subjective. Some people may have chosen to include babysitting, while others may think it doesn't apply. It all depends on the skills you use during that job and how you describe these skills afterward. If you decide not to include some of the jobs or experience you've had, you could save them to mention them in an interview, if you could make a connection to the job you're applying for, or you might just leave them out entirely. The main point of this exercise is to show you that you can choose to include or exclude any of the jobs depending on your situation. What is key is how you describe the job and what skills you highlight. Any of these could be included in the sales representative resume if you highlight applicable skills like responsibility, punctuality, customer service, professional attitude, attendance, so on and so on. Many of them could also be excluded if you have been in the workforce for a long time and have more professional work experience or if you mention the experiences without following with relevant skills. Let's talk about some of the skills we could have pulled from each of these positions. For a waitstaff position, you may have been tasked with upselling customers you were waiting on. Anything from telling them about desserts to suggesting a specific addition to their meal could be viewed as an upsell activity. As a cashier, you likely engage with customers for the majority of your workday, a skill important to a sales representative. Let's say you raised funds as part of your previous volunteer work. This experience could be viewed as being very similar to that of a sales representative. As a bank teller, you likely had to learn the details of every product or service the bank offered. This was a skill specifically included in the sales representative job description. Freelance blogging work could have required you to negotiate rates for your work with publications or clients. Negotiation skills are important in any sales position. Here's another way to use digital tools to help you organize the information for your resume. Use digital documents to keep a running list of all the things you might consider under experience. This might include part-time and full-time jobs, side work you do around the neighborhood, clubs or organizations you participate in, volunteer work, and many other things. You can update a digital document at any time from any device that is connected to the internet via Google Drive. This way, when you go to write or update your resume, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about what you did in the past. You'll have a complete list to pull from. Now let's review our third strategy. Maybe you have many things to include on your resume, but don't know which one to emphasize. How do you make those connections and show the employer that you're right for the job? By using specific examples and measurable details in the descriptions of your work experience to show what you have achieved and accomplished. When you cite specific examples and measurable details, this is known as showing impact. What specifically have you done and how it has impacted your coworkers, your team, or the company? Lots of people will have words like innovative, organized, efficient, leader, and effective communicator on their resume. But how can you show these qualities instead of just using these phrases? One way is to use specific examples from your work experience. Describe specific projects you've worked on, improvements you've made, processes you've developed, or goals you attained. Describe the quality of the work you've done in the past and show how it relates to what you can provide to the employer at the new job. The second way is to use measurable details, whenever possible, to quantify the work that you did. For example, you may say that you increased sales at your current job, but what exactly does that mean? Did you increase sales from 1 widget to 2 widgets per month, or from 1 widget to 1 million widgets? Show your impact in numbers whenever possible. This is also a great place to add any awards or recognition you received. These show how other people have viewed your accomplishments. I'm going to show you examples of work experience. For each example, list the kinds of measurable details and specific examples you might include if this was your resume. Feel free to drop your answers in the chat or just follow along. Think about how you can make these skills descriptions more specific using specific examples and measurable details. You can try rewriting at least one of these descriptions yourself on a sheet of paper or in a digital document. It's okay to make up the examples and details for now. Here is just one example of what your resume might look like once you've added those measurable details. As mentioned before, this updated example includes specific details and numerical examples of accomplishments. Here's another example. How could you make these skill descriptions more specific using specific examples and measurable details? Again, it's okay to make up the examples and details for now. Here are some ways you might rewrite the description of your volunteer experience to give hiring managers a better perception of your work. So instead of just stating that you served meals to shelter residents, you may say something like, served meals to over 200 shelter residents every other week for 6 months. Instead of organized holiday events, you may say, worked with the shelter director and obtained $2,000 from local businesses to fund the party, which prepared over 200 pounds of fresh food donations and decorated the community center for the event. See the difference? Lastly, we'll talk about how to tailor your resume for each job that you are applying to. Many businesses use screening software to narrow the pile of possible candidates before a manager even looks at them. These programs scan the resumes for keywords that are in the job description. If those words do not appear enough in the resume, the program determines that the person is not a good candidate for the position. For human and computer resume readers, you'll be most successful when your resume matches the language of a job description. When you create a resume for a particular job, you should incorporate as many of the keywords in your past experience and work history as possible. When you describe your past experience using the same terms the employer used in the job description, you not only get past the screening software or person, but you'll show that you paid close attention to the qualities they want in a candidate. Let's reread the job description we used earlier. Jot down a few words from the job description that you would incorporate into your resume if you were applying for this position. What are some of the words you would incorporate into your resume? In the second sentence, we notice that they are looking for a candidate to be responsible. So you may include words like responsible or motivated, manage sales cycle, identify sales need, design and deliver, preside over negotiations, customer service goals, and more. Pay close attention to the action verbs that are included in the job description as well. In this posting, this includes identifying sales needs and delivering sales presentations. Incorporate those same action words when you describe your own experience. For example, instead of saying that you sold more cars than your counterparts, you may say that you achieved or exceeded your individual sales goal. The action words that are in a job description can help you shape the skills list for each job and to include measurable details from your past work experiences. They also help your resume sound professional without sounding forced. Here, we have identified some of the action verbs from the job description you may want to incorporate into your own resume. Now let's review our 4 strategies. In this workshop, we began by looking at sample resumes to see what hiring managers look for. Then, we examined 4 strategies for improving your own resume. Remember to choose a professional format, highlight your skills and experience, and only include your most recent and relevant experiences. Include specific examples and measurable details. And finally, tailor your resume to the job you want. And use words that are within the job description to impress resume screening programs and hiring managers. Remember, you can always use a Google Doc to keep records of past experiences and measurable details. You can use Google Sheets to track every step of your application process. As you can see, this Google Sheet contains a tracker for a job search a candidate has applied for. Notice they list the position, the company name, the site where they found and applied for the job. They have an area for salary, a link to the job description, and the progress for application. They also have additional details like the commute from home to the potential job site, and notes about the position, whether it's full-time, flexible, and necessary requirements for the position. You can also create a digital portfolio within Google Slides. Each of these projects can be accessed anywhere from within your Google Drive account. These projects save automatically, so you don't have to worry about losing your work even if your computer crashes. And you can share the documents to collaborate from anywhere. Up to now, we've given you several strategies and digital tips. So before we conclude today's workshop, let's talk about some next steps. We want you to leave this workshop with a clear sense of what you should do next, So here are a few ways to move forward. Review possible resume templates and choose one that suits your industry, experience, and style by visiting docs.google.com and signing in with your Google account. You can examine your current resume and find places to include specific examples and measurable details. You should also consider creating a running list of experiences that you can use to tailor your resume by listing them in a digital document. You can also consider taking more workshops like these by visiting the Clayton County Library's website at www.claytonpl.org or visiting Grow on Air with Google. Lastly, we introduced a lot of different training options in this workshop. To view all of them in one location, you can visit the Grow with Google website at grow.google.com. These courses help you work, teach, and learn from anywhere, all for free with your Google account. And the Clayton County Library System is proud to be an official Grow with Google partner. In these online trainings and tools, you'll find information and resources for small businesses, job seekers, as we discussed today, students, veterans and military families, educators, and startups. This wraps up today's workshop. Thank you again for joining us. The replay of this presentation will be available tomorrow morning. Be sure to like and subscribe to the library's YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at ClaytonGALIB. Thank you again and have a great afternoon.